Hey guys, welcome back to the video. Okay, first thing I'm going to say is that we're just going to go with it, okay? We're going to figure it out on the fly. There will be some mistakes. We'll try to make the best out of it. The second thing is, let me just take a moment to admit that I am not smart enough to understand Xbox's plan in the future. Now, if you ask me where I am right now, as unable to understand what they mean as I am, my thinking is they simply get out of the space when it comes to hardware, just completely. Okay, no Xbox hybrids, no Xbox handhelds, no Xbox PC, no mystical box that's supposed to pull just three different disjointed worlds together. They just go away. Okay, they become Sega in true nature, software only, publisher everywhere, make tons of money doing it. That's basically it. That is my fault. That is my limited understanding. And today, I want you to know that unfortunately, we will not come to the answer, nor will I make a case as to why I think that getting out of the hardware space is simply what they're going to do. Instead, what I would invite you to do is simply watch my reasoning as to why I am so confused. Because I think that one of the best ways to minimize showing your ignorance to other people is to simply shut up and listen. And I think that you guys will often see that on this particular channel, I don't often, create videos in the moment. For me, the community reaction is a lot more important than just, firing off something quickly, responding instantaneously to whatever is announced or whatever is rumored and everything like that. So I've been listening and watching people and their opinions, for the last few weeks, when it comes to this, basically this big question that we have there out there in the air, which is basically what's the future for Xbox when it comes to the hardware? And there's been so many things going out there, but I just can't make sense of it. I just cannot see a way to release a hardware that makes sense, that is commercially viable and successful, that is good for the company and the consumer, that would just deliver what it needs to for every party involved. I just don't know how to do it. So let me show you why I'm confused, right? Maybe it will make sense. Okay. So over here, we are going to have on the left hand side, we're going to have our traditional console, right? Let's just call this the console side. Boom. You know what? This is like I said, we're gonna make some mistakes. Let's have it in green. Why not? Let's have the console. And then over here in, I guess, gray, let's have the PC, right? That looks more like a D. Let's do PC. That'll do. Okay. So let me tell you how I understand consoles, okay? So the first thing is that it is closed, right? Ecosystem, right? So by closing the ecosystem, what I mean by this is that we have a closed hardware or we have a defined hardware, right? So we're going to say we have defined hardware. And then we also have a fairly walled off garden, right, for the software. So what we're going to say is that we have walled software. Let's just call it like that. And what I mean by that is that, for example, if you think about things like the game store, whether that's on PlayStation, Xbox, or or Nintendo, you have, for example, the game store. You only have one, right? You only have the one from the main manufacturer. On the PlayStation, you have the PlayStation Store. On Nintendo, you have the Nintendo eShop. On Xbox, you have the Xbox Game Store or whatever they call it. But there's no competitor to that. There's no other software. There's no other place for you to officially get your game. Same thing with the physical media. The physical media is all done through and approved by the manufacturer of the console. Sony, if they want to release a game like Helldivers on Xbox, even in physical media, they have to get that permission, that license from the Xbox guys, so on and so forth. You don't just get to pull out the thing that people insert, like I think back in the day of when there was actually software physically on PC, there was no one that you had to send that software to for validation. Like if you were a company like Adobe or whatever, you will create your software, print it on disk, and then send it off to your consumers or to the stores so that they can be sold. You don't send it to Microsoft, and then Microsoft's like, okay, yeah, we approve of this. So that never existed on the PC side. So that's the very first thing for me that defines a console is that closed ecosystem, right? Now, there's pros and cons to everything, but that's not really what we're here about. We're not here to debate console versus PC, right? There's no versus here in the middle. There's just kind of like my understanding of what these things mean. Okay. And I think if I do that, then you guys can understand why I'm so confused as to how you could even bring these two together in a way that is actually enticing to people. Now, what's the next thing that I think about when I think about consoles is that you have a streamlined, right? And then you have something that is really high on the ease of use, right? So for the end user, I think a console is a specialist tool. It's a little bit like having a rice cooker, right? Like you can have a rice cooker that is a rice cooker by itself. All it does is cook rice. Maybe you can make porridge, you can make yogurt in there, but basically it just has this idea that it's going to heat up a certain amount of liquid, and then through that it's going to do things. It doesn't roast things, it doesn't microwave things, it doesn't sous vide, all these things. And then you can have like the multifunctional cookers that they can do pretty much everything. It feels like you could write a thesis in there for all the functions that they have. But the console is much closer to the rice cooker. It is a specialized appliance that is there to do really one thing really, really well, and it has a few extra functions in it. So for example, we're talking about streamlined. In this case for me, because we're talking about gaming consoles, it has a focus on gaming, right? Now I know that there is media. I know that you can use it as a Blu-ray player. I know that you can watch Netflix on it. I know you can download or some other apps that you typically have to do with media. But it has a strong focus on gaming, and that's what it allows you to do. And then this ease of use also translates to almost, for me, instantaneous setup, right? Instantaneous. Okay, I know how to spell it. It's just that writing it quickly is a little bit challenging. Okay, instantaneous, instantaneous setup. I've got it. Instantaneous setup. Okay, there we go. So for me, that's the other thing. So when you get your console home, typically you only have a few things in that box, right? So for example, over here, let's follow in purple. We can talk about having the console itself, right? You have a power cable. You will have a controller. You have a little bit of miscellaneous stuff, like the warranty, maybe a headphone, like, a headset that they give you, like a basic thing. I mean, what else do you have? Oh, HDMI cable, right? And then that's pretty much it. And then at the end of the day, um, it is even plug and play, right? So, and a big part of this is that typically you're going to sign, most of us are going to sign into an account, and you're going to sign into one account. Okay. And typically, this will be your account that you have with the manufacturer. So, for example, I know that later on you can sign on to your Netflix account, to your Hulu account if you download those media apps we were talking about. I know that, for example, you may need to sign into your Ubisoft account or your World of Warcraft account or whatever it is that you have on. But that's typically much later down the line. For the initial setup, you have just a few pieces of physical objects that you put together, and then when you go in there, I want to say that you're probably ready to go within like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I haven't reset my PS5 to do like the whole process from scratch. Ever since I got it basically. So I don't know exactly how long it takes, but I want to say that you're definitely out of the setup process within the half hour, right? That you connect to the internet, that's pretty much it, right? That's basically all you have to do. Basically, get the thing, get it out of the box, plug it all up, log onto your Wi-Fi, log onto your account, and then the process just terminates itself and it's very quick. So what's another thing that defines console gaming for me? Um, oh, the big thing is for me, yeah. I know that obviously we have digital consoles now, but there's also a physical media component to it, right? That's one thing that I think, obviously PC doesn't really do at all, you know. So having physical media is a pretty powerful thing. Again, I feel like this is already pretty good for the console side. If I come back, if I think of something else, I'm going to come back to it. But basically, this is kind of like my idea of the console. Now, notice that in this, I'm not talking about console wars or any console being better than another. I think that this is pretty universal. So I could remove this picture, or I could add pictures of PlayStation and Nintendo, and I think this would be true for pretty much all of them. So this is kind of my general universal idea of what a console is. Now let's talk about a PC, which, unlike what people think on the internet, I actually do have. And I have a PC that actually looks very much like this. I think this is actually the PC case that I have. So good finding, good job on me finding that photo. It's quite representative of what I know. Okay, actually, this is my PC case. That's crazy. Okay, so over here with PC, I think more about open ecosystems, right? And I mean this in both hardware and softwares, right? So you have a choice in hardware, okay? And then you have no, what I want to say is that you have no governing entity. So no governing entity in software. For example, if I wanted to install Adobe on my PlayStation, besides the fact that there's no such thing as an Adobe app for PlayStation, even if I could get it there, I would have to jailbreak my PlayStation in order to sideload any amount of software onto it. In which case, Sony would declare it to be, out of bounds to the terms and conditions. So they function as a governing body, on the console side. You don't have that on PC. On PC, sure, outside of getting things that are illegal, there's nobody that you have to give permission to. There's no way to jailbreak your PC, because you downloaded a piece of software that you wanted to. Like, you could download a whole new operating system if you want to, and you could get a hold of, let's say Mac OS, and somehow go in there and make it function on your standard Windows PC hardware configurations. Then you will be able to do that. And again, Asus, Windows, Microsoft, none of them will be governing what it is that you put on your software. So because of this, what you have as an offshoot is that, for example, we're going to have multiple storefronts, right? And I mean, these are pretty much infinite, right? So we have multiple storefronts. Okay. Another thing that we have in terms of like the open software ecosystem is that we have I guess we'll make this one a separate thing. Let's put it over here. A focus on general productivity. Okay. So over here, the PC is meant to be good at running software, any type of software, as long as that software is in a language that that particular hardware can run. So, and for I guess a general PC, it's like there isn't a lot of advantage for a company to make software that is not able to be run on a standard PC, right? Unless they are making, software for specific security reasons and everything like that. But aside from that, really, all of it is kind of programmed to work, with at least the Windows ecosystem in mind. So it's really hard. So the PC is meant to be really good at everything. It's meant to give you a decent, adequate experience at everything. So it's not just gaming. Your gaming PC is perfectly capable to be a media creative PC, to be an editor's PC, to switch hats depending on whatever you needed to do. You could use that as a production PC for like a studio and everything like that. You can use it subsequently, and of course, you can optimize the hardware for each of the specific tasks that you're doing. Now, I believe like if you're going to do things like crypto mining, then you may not want to use that same PC to do something else. But aside from that, you guys understand the flexibility that it gives you is tremendous. You can build your own use case scenario around the hardware and around the software that you put in. So over here, when you have this choice in hardware, is that you can really You can specialize or you can target, specific features that you want, right? And this is all great because this is all about you. It's all about your choice. It's all about the things that are valuable to you and the things that you want to invest in. Okay, so let's take a look over here, right? So we have, oh, of course, over here we have pretty much no physical media to speak of, right? I do know that you can buy, external readers, but for the most part, this PC is a pretty much digital space. Pretty much we get things from the internet. One thing that I will say is that it is quite often associated with Windows OS, and what I want to say is that my idea of the console is typically not defined by the operating system. However, yes, I understand you can have Linux. And yes, I understand that technically you could also say that a Mac is a PC, it's a personal computer. But we're talking specifically about PCs that, look like this one rather than one that's made by Apple. Um, because over here, Windows OS, the Windows operating system, is such a defining part of a PC that it really stands out here. Whereas now, even though I think about the operating system, I wouldn't have the operating system as a defining part of my idea of what a console is. Each operating system is quite distinct when it comes to, the console side. And of course, it has an impact on the user experience. But it's not like the thing that defines it. Whereas I feel like the PC is defined by Windows. And from Windows, we pick up a few things that are not so fun. So the very first thing is that you have an incredibly arduous, we don't even need incredibly in there. That just seems like I'm just making a case twice. But what I would say is that we have an arduous setup, right? And maintenance. I mean, setting up a Windows PC for the first time is easily a 1 hour plus affair, right? Sometimes you have to log into multiple accounts, and this can be as part of your initial setup. Yes, now you are forced to, with Windows 11, to log into your Microsoft account. They don't even make it easy for you to go and have a local PC account anymore. Log into multiple accounts. Okay, so including mandatory Microsoft account. Now, can I just take a moment to point this out, right? Typically, when a company asks of you to log into an account for something, it is for something that they need to deliver to you. There is absolutely no reason, for Microsoft to require you to have a Microsoft account to log into your PC. Absolutely none. Because when you take a look about the operating system by itself, just the operating system of your computer, I'm not talking about the OneDrive integration that you can have and the Microsoft 365 integrations that you can have. Just the operating system, there's no reason why that needs to be, from the consumer's perspective, tied into a Microsoft account because there's no function of the operating system that actually relies on that. If you had just had a local account, back in the days where you could just have local accounts, you can still have File Explorer. You can still have that garbage Windows search feature. You can still have, Copilot shoved down your throat. You can still have everything that your actual operating system does. None of that requires any cloud. It doesn't require any login. All they are doing is forcing you to log on to the Microsoft account so that they can just spy on you more. That's basically it. So they can get telemetry that is very hard quite often to completely opt out of, so that they can basically sell you as the data. But this is, again, Windows, whether you pay $15 because you get it from CD Keys or whatever, or you pay $150 because, you just didn't know that you could get Windows for cheaper, it is a paid product, right? Again, I'm not talking about people that pirate it or people that refuse to validate their copy of Windows. You pay for Windows and they force you to have a Microsoft account, even though they give you nothing in return for having that privilege. The only thing they can possibly argue is that we automatically log you onto OneDrive and then we automatically, send Office 365, down your throat for no reason. but it's like I don't actually like OneDrive all that much. I could easily just use Google Drive instead. But another thinking thing that they do, this is kind of a tangent, but in Office 365, if you link it to your OneDrive, the things like Word and Excel, they will automatically save pretty much after everything that you do. It's a nice convenience feature. It means that you don't have to control save anymore. And I've always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed like, okay, you're linked to my OneDrive. That's kind of annoying because I don't prefer OneDrive. OneDrive is like the edge of like online storage solutions. I don't love it. It's not my favorite. It's not really what I would go for. I would go for Dropbox or Google Drive before I go for OneDrive, but it is what it is. I enjoy the fact that Word automatically saves the documents when you have it linked to OneDrive. But then the other day I was like, nah, that's enough. That's enough. I'm already paying for Google Drive, so let me just put everything onto Google Drive. And I do that, and then Office no longer will automatically save, when it comes to actually having the Word the Word document saved through Google Drive. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But I was like, wait a second, does it make sense? Like, why can't it automatically save anyway? Because the thing is, it saves in a location, right? All it knows is that that location is not OneDrive, but it doesn't know that it is Google Drive or a rival platform or whatever. It just saves on a folder somewhere else on my computer. Why can't it automatically save anyway? But that's just Microsoft being desperate and trying to force people to use the software because, quite frankly, the software is quite garbage and people don't want to use it unless they are feeling that they're being strong armed into it. Like, have you ever tried when you first get your Windows PC and there's only Edge? And so you click on Edge and you immediately, the very first thing that you do is go download the better browser, like go download Firefox or Google Chrome or Brave or whatever. And then they give you this big pop up like, oh my God, you're about to leave us. You're about to leave Edge. Oh no, what would happen? Another very sneaky thing is that if you go into your settings, if you don't have OneDrive connected, your Windows security settings, like the one that says the Windows Defender, it will give you a orange warning saying that your computer is less secure because you're not using OneDrive. Like literally making you think or making a person that's less tech savvy believe that their computer is somehow vulnerable or exposed to malware because they did not want to use OneDrive. Isn't that kind of embarrassing? That's stupid. Anyways, let's continue. So this is PCUI. So we have the open ecosystem. We have the focus on general productivity. You have the Windows OS. You have an arduous setup and maintenance. Over here, another thing is that you have what I would say is everything to do with let's not forget with the Windows OS, like the dreaded Windows updates, which always seems to be worse than the last one. So we have Windows updates over here to deal with, But Windows OS is really everything there. But over here maintenance falls to the end user. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, right? And it sounds like a repetition of what I said before, right? Let's try to write it a little bit better. To the end user. Okay, not much better than last time. This sounds pretty obvious, and it sounds like a repetition of what I put before there. But I want to talk about it from a different perspective. And the perspective I want to talk about is the fact that kind of everything is your fault, right? Now think about it. When you have a console and something goes wrong with that console, and it is not a user error, right? Like maybe your PlayStation just powers off for no reason repeatedly. Could be in one game, could be in multiple other instances. Maybe there's a weird beep or a weird click. What has happened there is that Sony has put together this entire package, right? Regardless of whatever subcontractors they use in the machining of the product, they are the ones that sold you the product. So at the end of the day, what I always tell people is if there's something wrong with your console, pick it up, pack it up, bring your receipt with you, and go hand it back over to the counter, wherever you bought it from. It's better for you to have a physical store that you can go to, but basically you hand it back and you tell them, hey, you deal with Sony, I just want my new version, right? Or worse, you contact Sony, want to support yourself, you tell them, hey, here's my invoice number, here's my receipt, and basically this is your problem to deal with. Take it back, give me a new one, or whatever it is. Basically, you hand it back to them and you say, this was your fault, therefore it's your responsibility. Now with PC, this culture is not the same. I'm not saying that it never happens, but the culture is not the same. So you could have, for example, whether it's a pre-built PC or a PC that you built yourself, like mine is, and basically, if there is a problem, especially a problem that is very hard to target, like let's say, for example, for me, one thing that I have in my PC is that sometimes certain USBs would just not work. In fact, on my motherboard, I think I bought a motherboard that had like 8 USB ports. I can swear to you, half of those are not working. And those are pretty much, they're pretty easy to identify, right? Because that's directly on the motherboard. But I also have some USBs on my case that are not working. So I plug in a USB drive. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It is sporadic. Who knows? It's annoying as hell. But here's the thing. In that case, who do I hand the computer back to? Is it my physical case that is having the issue? Do I go and take it to Lian? Is it my motherboard again? Is it a cable in between? This, because I put in myself and no one manufacturer has control over the entire thing, it's very hard for me to argue like, hey, this is your responsibility, fix it. Well, okay, well, what about, the motherboard? I know it's the motherboard because I plugged directly into the motherboard and that's not working. Okay, well, the problem is that's the motherboard. I can't just send it off for repair or for replacement to Asus. I will have to, first of all, go without my PC, but more importantly, spend hours on doing all of the work of putting everything onto the motherboard because everything connects to the motherboard. So I'll have to basically disassemble my PC, send it to Asus, hope that they fix it, that they believe me, or everything like that, and that I get a good unit back in return, and then put everything back together, going through the whole pain of everything again. I can't just take my PC to Asus as it is, be like, hey, yes, I understand I put all of these other parts together, but you just fix the motherboard. Like, you go through the disassembly process, you put in a brand new motherboard, you reassemble it, and then you give it back to me. That simply doesn't happen. And I think that there's a culture, especially from PC fans, of just blaming everything on the end user. Like, you tell people, hey, my motherboard doesn't work, and they will literally rather blame you for picking, quote unquote, the wrong motherboard, even though that wasn't your fault. And then they will tell you that, oh, your parts are cheap or you should get something more expensive. And then when you tell them how expensive that motherboard was, which, by the way, that thing was about $300 for me. So it's supposed to be a good motherboard. But what they'll then tell you is that, oh, it's too expensive. Why'd you buy that? So, like, from the manufacturers, there is this notion that, well, they can always just, but they're not always solely responsible for the fault that you're having. Because for me, the USB thing is a pretty simple fault, if you think about it. Pretty simple, pretty low level. It's easy to diagnose, for the most part. But when it comes to like things that are actually happening wrong with the software, like for example, you may not be receiving all of the clocks that your graphics card has, or that you take one graphics card from a computer, you run through the bench on it, and kind of what the score is. You put it in your other computer, and in that computer, the score is like a quarter of what it was in the previous one. You've checked the drivers, you checked everything. Well, who do you go for that? The graphics card isn't defective because if you take it back to the first computer, you get that full performance again. Well, okay, well, now there's something wrong with your other computer. That could be the newer computer. Is it the motherboard? Is it, the cable, the power cable that you're using? Is it the power supply? Is it the fans? Does it not have enough cooling? Is it the case somehow? There is this sense of like, no one manufacturer is solely responsible for what you are experiencing. And so you can't just go to them and be like, hey, here's your thing, fix this thing, or offer me a replacement right away, right? And that goes through everything. And if you ever go on forums, again, it begins with like, the problem is you, no matter what it is. So that's one thing what I mean by the maintenance falls onto the end user, which, by the way, that does not look like falls, does it? Jesus Christ. I mean, listen, handwriting is, problematic, but wow, let's just, I think that's a bit better. Okay, so point is, there is this, right? So we have these two things, and I think that to me, they are diametrically opposed, because we have to talk a little bit about how each of these business models work, right? So on console, it is easy because the hardware and the software is made. Well, let's put it this way: the hardware environment and the software environment are both decided by the same manufacturer, right? So, for example, over here, let's say, so how to make money? Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, right? We have a 100% what we say revenue for first party titles, again, this is less retail uh, costs, right? So, for example, if you take your game to retail, for example, if you go, to a JB Hi-Fi or an EB Games or GameStop and you buy Ghost of Yote from there, Sony must have given them some money, or Sony, there's some amount of revenue in your purchase that goes to the company that actually sold it to you at the point of sale, the reseller. But if it's digital, then Sony earns all that money. And then it's pretty simple here. We have 30% revenue from third party sales, and this is regardless of whether it's a digital or not. And then, well, just if it isn't, just forgive, just I'm pretty sure it's 30% regardless. And then, okay, what we have is that you have 100% revenue from subscriptions, okay. And yeah, that's it. Now, by the way, include microtransactions in the respective places, whether it's first party or third party. Okay, so there it is. So there it is. That's pretty straightforward. There's three channels of ways. There's three ways to make money. First, you can sell your own first party games. You get 100% of that, give or take, minus the retail cost. Second, you sell third party games, right? Again, you're going to get 30% of from those. And this includes microtransactions. So I guess this we'll put including micros, right? So over here, this will again include micros. Okay, and then you get 100% revenue from your subscription models. So that's it. Unless it's third-party subscription models like an EA Play, in which case I guess you get 30%. I guess. Do we have to? Do you have to? Or I guess we'll do it. Let's just do 30% revenue or whatever. I'm not sure if it's 30% from third-party subscriptions. Right? I don't see why it wouldn't be that. Okay, so this would be like if you have EA Play on console or whatever. Okay, so I guess we'll say four broad channels of revenue earning. Maybe I'm forgetting one. You guys let me know. But it's pretty straightforward how this business model works. Now, out of all of these, this one here is by far the most important. Okay, like it's not even the other two. I would say do not even matter, right? So it's this one here. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. We are not doing a line. Are we doing a circle? If yes, we're doing a circle, but we are going to just do it manually. Is this guy? This guy right here. That's not a circle. That's not even an oval. That's crazy. But that's the one that matters. It is the 30% cut from third-party sales and microtransactions. That's the one that matters. Okay. Beyond anything else, this is it. So basically, from the gamer's perspective, I would say that the most important part of a console, so what I would say is that from the end user, let's do this. From the end user, a console plays games, right? And from the company, ba ba ba, I will say that the console is a storefront. That's it. Okay, this is like the so what of it all. If a person was like, why do people do this thing? Why is it that they gain? This would be it. This would be the thing that matters the most, right? That's it. And again, to me, that's very easy to understand, right? There's things that we're not talking about yet, as the fact that, for example, consoles can be subsidized by the companies that make them. They can be sold at a loss for a while, then they can catch up. They can be made cheaper over time, blah, 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 blah. They cost X billions of dollars to research and develop. It doesn't matter. This is basically the gist of what a console is. I understand that. I get that. It makes sense to me. That's cool. Let's talk about the money from the PC side. Okay. So, first of all, if we're talking money, right? What I would say is that each vendor, or let's say each hardware vendor, uh, profits on their, what would you call it? The piece, the part, the equipment. Each hardware vendor profits on their sales, I guess. We'll just go with that. On the component. Okay, right. Let's just put component. So that's the very first difference. There's not one person profiting. When I have this PC, I have a CPU, a motherboard, a cooler, fans, I have a GPU, I have RAM, I have SSDs, I have hard drives, I have LED strips and LED lights, you know, all of these things, each person is pulling differently. Somebody has to profit from that. Now, of course, you could choose to make a build that is pretty much entirely Asus, for example. I think Asus makes enough parts to actually cover everything. They make power supplies, they make motherboards, they partner with NVIDIA and AMD and probably Intel on GPUs. They don't make CPUs themselves, but aside from that, I think you can pretty much, they make fans. They pretty much make everything else that you could want. I think they make fans. They might not make fans. I don't know. I haven't checked in a while what Asus does, but Asus is probably like the biggest that I know of that pretty much has almost everything covered. Okay, there we go. All right, so over here, each hardware vendor profits on their component. Okay, pretty easy, pretty straightforward, easy to understand. But then, because of that, that means that that's the hardware. There's no one else that profits from it. Now, if you looked over here, all of the profits were software related, right? There's no one actually profiting on hardware from the console side. This was not, I didn't write here sale of the console. That's kind of ridiculous. And I know that they do not subsidize every console, but let's just say, again, when you just look at the general idea, when you think of a console, aside maybe from Nintendo, you typically don't make money on your console, right? Okay, I'll write it here for you Nintendo fans, right? On consoles, sometimes they sell, but then how much profit is there? Yeah, see, the thing is, over here, these were things that were actually, I guess we'll just put revenue. I guess just revenue from console sale, right? We'll just put it here, just so that we have everything kind of there. 5 ways. Now over here, first thing is that the vendors profits on their hardware. The second thing is that no one entity profits on software, right? And the thing is that they have to keep selling you, but now you have platforms. So it's like PC itself is, I don't even know how to put it. It's like, it's almost like a nexus. That's the best way that I can think about it. Like there's different vendors and everything, and they can all be linked to your PC. So I guess it's like maybe like a source from which is like different webs. And Nexus kind of sounds more integral than it really is. It's more like a hub. That's what it is. It's a hub that can connect to other things, right? So, for example, instead of saying no one entity, because a person could argue like Steam could profit from your thing, is that what is it? What would you say? Is that software sales, right? So software sales depend on which platforms you patron, right? And when it comes to gaming, because we should still kind of have it towards gaming, there is Steam, right? Epic, uh, the Xbox app. So I guess we call it Xbox. You know, GOG, and then specialized. You know, I think like for example, what do they have? Don't they have like a Blizzard? You know, and then things like RuneScape. They have their own League of Legends. Does that is that Valve? I don't know. But point is, you have like specialized stores that are like for their one pieces of software, things like that. But basically, these are like the four general purpose big ones that I can think of, over here. And basically, what happens here is that once you buy a PC, right? So when you buy a console, Microsoft is the only one. Let's say you buy the Xbox. Microsoft is the only one that makes this money right here, right? The ones that we detail here, they're the only ones that made this money. Whereas over here, when you buy a PC, you could buy a PC and then Steam could make all of your money, right? This could be your bar chart over here. You could have Steam here, maybe Epic, maybe something here, maybe Xbox, something there, and then maybe GOG, something there. This could be like a reasonable, profit, percentage. So something like that, let's just do a straight line, boom. And then over here, watch me, boom, we're about to do this, something like that, right? This is a reasonable chart, right? This could be there, except George is probably way too high, but this could be it. And Steam, I mean, to be fair, let's make it more reasonable, guys. Let's take our time over here, right? I feel like people get my point, but sometimes I just get pedantic over here. Let's create a realistic graph that will show people like what it could be. People will be like, "Oh, Emmanuel, you pay so much attention to detail. You really want the people to know what it could be, right?" So let's go. Let's do this thing. So first of all, let's face it. Most people are going to feel like Steam is going to be here, right? Pop, pop, pop. I'm even going to give it percentages. This is going to be 90%. Let's face it, this is realistic. Okay. Then over here, this is going to be there. You know what? You're going to have 3%. It's not to scale. Okay. We're not going to worry about scale. That's 93. Xbox, just because you have that what is it, Play Anywhere title, I'm going to give you more. I'm going to give you 5%. That's it. And then GOG, even though everybody says that they like you, barely anyone uses you. So that one's going to be at 2%. There we go. This is what it could look like. And this is, I think, is very realistic for most PC gamers. And this is a very different picture. Because when we talk about this, we're going to talk specifically about how Microsoft approaches the next generation, right? And over here, I'm going to put this one. Okay, I'm going to put the numbers next to it. This is 90%. This over here, I said was what, 3%. This here is 5%. And this here is 2%. So this is kind of the PC world as I understand it. Xbox could make, first of all, Microsoft makes zero money on their hardware. I don't think that there is, aside from like a Windows keyboard and mouse, I don't think that there's any hardware really that Microsoft sells that goes into a PC. In fact, the keyboard and mouse doesn't go into the PC, but really, like, Microsoft doesn't make anything that goes into the PC, right? They have nothing to sell you there. Then the software side, they will sell you the operating system, which again you can buy for like usually $10 to $15, if you know where to look, and it's a fully legal copy. And then that's it. That's kind of like all the rich. Like, you could build a $2,000 PC, and you give Microsoft maybe $20 of it. If you really like the keyboard and mouse, which by the way, I have a Microsoft keyboard and and no, I use a Logitech mouse, but I do actually have the I have the mouse as well. It's just that I don't use it every day. It's my debug mouse. Like when Windows decides to be shit and not connect my Bluetooth, and I need the mouse to debug my computer, which is a thing you need. I pull out that mouse. So maybe give them like $100 all in. That's it, really. And then you technically you never have to give Microsoft your money again. So it's no wonder that they love doing these things to basically infringe upon your sovereignty on PC because they don't have to see you. You don't have to interact beyond the operating system. You don't have to interact with any Microsoft product on PC, no matter what you do. So that's one thing where I'm like, oh, I don't know. Okay, so where do we start with all this? When it came to the next generation for Xbox, I don't think they're going to do a console. The reason I don't think that they're going to do a console is that for them, let's face it, it's expensive. Just for the R&D. It is unpopular and it's getting less popular by the day, right? It is not trusted by the public, right? They have lost a lot of trust, even more so than they had. Um I think it is seen as uncool to have an Xbox nowadays. Like it's not just that it's unpopular, like not people don't know about it. It's that it's actively, kind of like a repellent to people. And yeah, the value proposition just hasn't been there. But basically, these are the things that are going up against it, right? And then people say, okay, well, what if they release a PC? So let's first talk about the first case scenario, which is going to be sort of like, what if we had, okay, in this first option, let's take a first option look. What if we had, let's see, which color do you want to go for? Let's take this. And let's create a little case scenario, right? Let's create a little case study over here. Okay, and you know what? Let's make this transparent there. I don't know why that turned on. Okay. Okay. So over here, what if we had a Microsoft PC, right? So I guess over here, what if Microsoft makes a PC? Okay. So this could be like a desktop surface kind of a thing. First, it would be a closed ecosystem in terms of hardware. So closed hardware ecosystem. It will have Windows as an operating system. Okay. And then it would just be like every other PC. Right? Now the closed hardware ecosystem basically means that it will be a bit like the closest analogy would be like a Mac Studio, right? Or pretty much any PC device, desktop device by Apple. Basically, it's a closed ecosystem. You're not really meant to go in there. They pick your components or you select them from a drop-down box on the website. But once they ship it to you, it pretty much stays like that, and you certainly don't do many interventions on your own. You don't replace RAM on your own. You just basically what you get is what you get at the end of the day. Would Microsoft create a PC like this? They could, and of course they could make money, right? They could profit from the hardware, right? They could make sure that it is optimized to be smaller and compact and everything. Okay, so they could profit from the hardware, but that's pretty much it. They have very little control otherwise, right? Because this thing will still be true. And this is the reason why I don't think that they are going to do this. Sure, they could make money on the point of sale, right? They could have like a $300, $400, $500 profit on the hardware, especially if they make it very sleek. But then these people will still just download Steam on it because it's still just a Windows operating system. Okay? And so I don't think that they're going to do this because again, as soon as you do this, the problem is that there are other options, right? So this is my thing why I don't think there are just too many other options to Windows users. So why would I want to have your Microsoft product, which is like a Mac Studio or whatever? I'm not saying that it would be that small, but basically just that closed hardware ecosystem, and you pay me a premium for it. Why would I want that when I could just build a PC of my own that rivals your hardware configuration? And even if it might not be as small or as sleek, I can make it to be whatever I want it to be, and then I have full ability to go in and out of it. Right? Again, you take a look at the Surface devices, they've pretty much gone underground. And again, that's because I just think that Windows users have too many options. Now, the big thing about Mac users is that there are no other options, right? Now, the only other options are either are other computers made by Apple. If you want Mac OS, it is exclusive to Apple hardware. So if you really like what that does, whether that is part of the Apple ecosystem or on its own, you have to get another Mac. You know, they'll be like, oh yeah, you know, oh, you don't like this option? Oh, don't worry. We have this other option available to you. It could be like a desktop Mac or an iMac or whatever. But the point is, you're not getting Mac OS outside of an Apple approved and branded and everything else like that option that they give you. So I think that's the big difference as to why I don't think that this option is going to work for Microsoft. So I don't think they're just going to make a PC. Nor do I think they're just going to get another manufacturer to make them a PC for the same reason. At the end of the day, you charge me a $500 premium, and I think to myself, wait a second. First of all, I can already match your performance with whatever normal price tag you would give me, and I gain the freedom of the open hardware ecosystem. But then you charge me a premium on top of that. Well, now I can put more money into the PC and get something that's better than what you're proposing. And again, it can be more customized, it can fit my aesthetics more, and you don't have the Windows operating system is not exclusive, right? And that's the big difference between Mac OS and Windows OS. So this is not exclusive. You see, guys, why exclusives matter? Okay, now the big thing that's been going around, right? Let's talk about it. The big idea. What's been the big idea recently? And let's talk about it first. It's the Windows PC hybrid thing. Sorry, not Windows PC hybrid thing, Xbox PC hybrid thing. The Xbox PC hybrid. I don't know. I don't know how that makes sense to me. Because to me, an Xbox PC hybrid has to somehow marry these two things. Remember that when we take a look over here, these guys don't even make money the same way. Microsoft makes all of this money. These are all the revenue sources over here, right? Okay. I don't know if you would say collectively that's 100% revenue or 70% revenue, but they make a lot of money from here. Over here on Windows, I mean, they're lucky if they get 5%. There are plenty of people that will completely strike out Xbox from this particular graph that I created, and they will just put in something in there, maybe the Blizzard launcher or the, whatever game they play, the RuneScape launcher, I don't know. But that will be the part where they actually put in their revenue. And then 90% of it will still be Steam. There are some people for whom it'll be 100% Steam. That's it. They only spend money on Steam, pretty much. And it's like, it doesn't matter what Microsoft does in terms of having, how do you do that? If these two categories on how to make money, if they were somehow somewhat analogous, if there was like 100% revenue from first party games, and you will have this kind of revenue from, if you could make money off of third party game sales, then I guess you would. But the only way you make revenue off of third party game sales is that you yourself have to be the platform. You see, it is these guys that make that kind of money. For example, it is Steam that makes 100% revenue from the first party sales. It is Steam that makes 30% revenue from third party sales. It's Steam. Yeah, it can be Xbox as well, but that's a subset of an option within the PC. Because remember, the PC itself is a hub. So this is the money for the PC itself. It's the hub. And then there's only when people choose your platform to connect to that hub that now you can come up with those other cells, kind of like cell vectors that we had on this side over here. Whereas here, this is the storefront. This is it. That's the beauty of it. It's so simple and yet it's so effective because you have to go through here. And another company that works like this, for example, is Kaleidoscape. If you guys are not in the world of home theater, basically what Kaleidoscape is that it's like a little DVR, right? It's a little streaming box, except it doesn't stream so much as it downloads. And they let you download high quality 4K files that are often better than what you even get printed on Bluetooth. And what you would do is that you have this little kaleidoscope thing, and then they also sell you, and this is how they get you. They also sell you like basically hard drives, but you have to like use their own proprietary system, and then they sell you on that storage space, which costs lots and lots of money. And then they sell you the storefront. So you can either, I think you can subscribe, I think there's a subscription, but essentially you're supposed to buy a movie. So you can buy things like Spider-Man No Way Home, and then you would download like a 40 gig version of Spider-Man No Way Home, which will rival in terms of quality or surpass the Blu-ray. And then their promise, I think, is that if they come up with an 8K version of Spider-Man No Way Home, then eventually that will be available as part of your purchase, right? So you always get at the latest and greatest format that particular movie is available in. But then the advantage there is that when you open up the interface, you basically have it as a Netflix interface, right? For all of your purchases, okay? But when you click, you are not streaming from the internet. You're actually just playing from the downloaded copy that you have made. And it's at the highest quality possible. So for people that have investing hundreds of $1,000s in their home theater experience, then it makes a lot of sense to spend, let's say $25,000 in making sure that you have the best movies and the best qualities while still having the advantage of a digital collection. Because remember, yes, you could go and buy the movies, but then if you're like a huge audiophile and a huge cinephile, you could have like 1,000 movies. And instead of carrying all of that physical weight around, you just have a Kaleidoscape account. And it works a lot like a console. It basically works exactly like the console does in terms of business model, but for movies, basically. So if you guys haven't seen it, it's called Kaleidoscape. Go and take a look here. I'll even write it down for you. It's fascinating. It costs a lot of money. I think it's Kaleidoscape. So, if you ever win the lottery and you're like, hey, Emmanuel, I would love to do something really nice for you. You know what to do. I'm not going to say none, but you know what to do. Okay, so Kaleidoscape works a lot like the console, and it's just pretty much the same way, except in terms of focus on gaming, it focuses on movies, right? So I understand that, but this doesn't make any sense to me. But let's get to the big one. Here she is, the one we've been waiting for to talk about. It's the hybrid, the one that's supposed to split evenly between these two, right? Take this world, okay, and feed it into here, right? Take this, feed it into there, take this, feed it into here, and then you end up at the magical, the mystical, the so beautiful. It is somehow, it makes you handsome just by looking at it. And what we're just going to call it is, what's the thing? Let's take a dark purple. Xbox PC. You know what? No separation. Let's have a cool X. Yeah, let's do. Nah. Huh? Nah. That's basic. Yeah, there we go. Xbox PC. There we go. That seems big, important, inescapable. What is this supposed to be? I don't know. And I'm not talking about the ROG Xbox Ally. It's just a photo that I have to represent it, okay? We're not going to argue about whether it's an Xbox or not. By the way, it is an Xbox. Let's just forget about it, okay? Let's just move forward. Now, for me, the biggest thing is that what is going to be the operating system? Okay? This is my very first question. Because there's only two choices here, right? You either have Windows, right? Which is going to be open, okay? And takes you right back to here, right? Windows leads directly back up there. Or you're going to have maybe Xbox OS just as a stand-in, and that kind of pushes you in this direction. My issue is that these things are not they don't really, there's no middle ground in between them. You either have something that's open or something that is closed, okay? But then they tell me, okay, well, Emmanuel, what if instead of this closed, you have a hybrid? So let's say that you start with Xbox OS and it has the Xbox Game Store, or whatever they call it, and then you also allow, right, Steam, for example. Let's just talk about Steam alone. My problem is that if you allow Steam on the Xbox OS, for this particular device, you're going to end up with this thing. It's still going to be, in this case, it might be 80% Steam and then maybe 20% Xbox Game Store in terms of like revenue and purchase. And I don't see why Steam would allow Microsoft to somehow take some of the cut. But I guess this is one way they could work. The good thing about going this way is that you avoid Windows. You avoid things like Windows updates. You avoid things like the audio setup process. You go this way and you're pretty good. Now, if you go this way and you go the open ecosystem, then Steam is going to just take over. Okay? So then my point is that how does Microsoft make money? Now, you could make money on the hardware itself, right? So if you're talking about money, this is really kind of like what we were talking about here. You have a closed hardware ecosystem, right? So you have a closed hardware ecosystem. So your hardware is set, again, like a Mac Studio or whatever. And then you profit on point of sale, right? So point of sale. But then the bad part is that on the operating system, you're still going to lose to Steam. And that's my thing. Steam is so much better than whatever Windows has going on in the Windows app that I just don't see people, even people that are only on Xbox and have never been on PC, pretty quickly, they're going to be told by the community, they're going to be told by the fans, why are you going through the Xbox Game Store or the, Microsoft Gaming, whatever it is, right? Just go to Steam. Because the moment you make Steam available on this device, that's what people are going to shop at. In fact, people that have this particular device that is pictured in front of us, the ROG Xbox Ally X, all they go through is Steam. Nobody, I swear to you, nobody has actually, people have shown off the interface, like, oh, here's the Xbox UI interface or whatever. But no one has actually been like, oh yeah, let me play this game through Game Pass. Everybody's going through Steam and just playing the games from there. Just straight up. People do not want the Xbox Store or the Xbox app. Then people say, okay, well, what if you start with Windows? Okay, so let's start again, right? Let's have something. You have with Windows, right? And then they say, here's the gotcha, Emmanuel. You streamline it. They say that word, streamline. Oh, you streamline Windows. Streamline. Okay, here's my problem with that. Microsoft has had numerous devices, right? Again, we're not talking about like the Xbox OS, which is like a spin-off from Windows. We're talking about have Windows pretty much available as the full operating system that it is. You can still have Steam, Steam on it. You can still have Teams on it. You can still have, all of these other things on it. But now you streamline it and you basically refine Windows to be, a lighter, more agile version of itself. And my problem with that is that this is not in Microsoft's MO because they have had laptops for years that suffer from bad battery life because Windows is crap on the portable platform. And they've never streamlined that, even though they sell millions of laptops per year. Then the other thing is that they have had Surface, their own hardware that could have benefited from a streamlined version of Windows, and they never streamlined it. Another thing is that they've had Windows OS, Windows 10 and Windows 11 gaming mode, which is supposed to recognize when you're in the game and then stop certain background processes to give you more performance. And those things do jack shit. So again, my problem is that it's just not in Microsoft's MO. I do not think that this device is suddenly going to force Microsoft to streamline Windows in any significant way. No, you will either have two things. You either have a Windows OS that is open, like you have on the ROG Xbox Ally X, and therefore comes with all of the downsides of Windows OS, or you're going to have the Xbox OS, but then I guess in order to follow this Xbox PC thing, you allow third-party storefronts, and then you end up with this lopsided idea where you no longer make revenue from the actual sales of the majority of the software that is sold on that particular platform. And herein lies my dilemma. And this is again before we consider, oh, they could partner up with different hardware manufacturers and basically license the name of Xbox and all of those things. So you basically have branded PCs. And it's like, all of this headache for what? For what? To provide software titles that could already be bought on platforms that exist and are understood by the end user? This will be the most confusing thing to get through to people. I'm confused about it, and I love talking about this thing day in and day out. I love listening to people's ideas, but I feel like people have this weird idea that somehow Microsoft is incentivized to figure it out. Okay, let's say that they do figure this out. Let's say they figure out Xbox PC. What are the sales predictions? 10 million? Do you think they will sell 10 million of these things? I think they will hardly sell 10 million of these things. Because you're not a console and you're not a full PC. What do you have? I don't think there's a happy middle ground. Sometimes the dividing fence is there for good reason. What was that saying? Like, I don't know who said it, but he basically said that, hey, never take down a fence until you first find out why it was put up in the first place. This fence, this barrier between these are two completely different worlds, which, by the way, is why, well, actually, it's not why, but it's also part of the reason, I will say, that I don't like talking to PC gamers about these things. So I just don't like talking to PC gamers about gaming in general, because we are on completely different sides of the fences. We experience a completely different environment, completely different relationship with the products that we have in our homes, completely different relationships with the software that we buy and how that is made and everything like that. We should not be talking as if we are the same people. Okay? We can have cross dialogue, but we need to understand that we're looking at things from very different perspectives. Okay, but when we look at this fence in this middle, I don't think there's something that can straddle this line and be good all around. All I see is a bunch of compromises that neither the company nor the end user wants to make. Because what if over here you didn't have a closed ecosystem? What if you had a open hardware ecosystem, right? And then it's like, again, you end up with this problem where maybe Microsoft sells you the shell or the initial device, and then you go in and you tinker, and now who is responsible if something goes wrong? Because Microsoft's going to tell you, hey, man, you changed the configuration. We didn't authorize that, so we're not responsible for that, And then you're going to be like, but what if the issue is with your thing? Like, again, let's say that you change the SSD in it, but the problem is with the screen. Now they can be with you like, hey, listen, you changed the SSD. That's your issue, even though it might not be. So I just don't think that an open hardware ecosystem works in where they give you like a box, or, they're going to give you like something like a little small box, and then they allow you to like change components inside. Apple barely even wants to do that. And I can also understand it from their perspective why. They don't want you to tinker in there. They don't want to go in and potentially fix your mistakes. So I just don't think that this happens, right? I don't think that there's an open hardware ecosystem where Microsoft sells you, again, this, I guess, starting block, and then you can go in and customize, what you want. I just don't think that this option works. So I don't know. And I don't know how to sell any piece of hardware that has a third-party storefront that does not inevitably end up in this kind of a scenario where it's actually Valve that benefits the most from this particular thing. Okay? And so there is my dilemma. This is why I say I am not intelligent enough to understand where Microsoft goes next unless they simply just do none of it. This is what I truly believe. Okay? They just no hardware Well, that's why is that even supposed to be? No hardware whatsoever. This is what I think makes the most sense for me. That's it. No Xbox hardware whatsoever. I think that's my conclusion. That's it. That's all I can see. If you guys, if you guys can see something beyond what I've been able to, please let me know. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know. just let me know. I'm looking forward to your comments because I don't see it. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. But hey, at least I made my case, right? All right. Talk to you guys in the next one.